Equivalence and equivalent effect by Nida.
Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about Nida's theory, specifically about equivalence and the principle of equivalent effect, which is one of the most essential theories in translation studies. In the beginning, we are going to talk about the heated debate around the equivalence, and then we are going to talk about the arguments of the theory. Then we are going to discuss the developments of the concept over the years. Then we are going to implement the theory in translator training today. To begin the discussion, why there is heated debate?
The argument against Nida was because although Nida has moved toward a scientific approach in translation, but the translator will need his judgment. And so that's why Nida was criticized by many scholars because of the subjectivity that will be inevitable.
Oh, that's why Gentizers criticized Nida for his religious and evangelizing point of view.
Yeah.
Also, one of the scholars is Kinhu, who argues that it is impossible to achieve equivalent effect, and he justifies that in various levels.
Okay, let's talk about the argument by Kinhu, who shows criticism in his journal, The Impossibility of Equivalent Response. First of all, we need to know what Nida is saying. The core of his theory is the response, the equivalent response in dynamic equivalence, when the receptor is expected to respond to the text in a way that the original reader does. And Kinhu sees that the form and the content are inseparable. So, so it's impossible to reach meaning if linked to the form. He gave an example of English and Chinese translation, and I can say that also Arabic and English translation are different. So, like the word order. The word order in Arabic is verb, subject, object, and in English is subject, verb, object. And as Kinhu thinks, it's impossible to achieve equivalent response in real Arabic and English translation if we link the meaning to the form.
So he thinks also there is a contradictory relation between closed natural equivalence and dynamic equivalence.
For example, there are only 3 names of moon in Arabic that have equivalent in English, while in English there are 8 phrases that describe moon, such as new moon is equivalent to word hilal in Arabic, full moon is equivalent to badr in Arabic, waning crescent is equivalent to muhaq in Arabic. However, there are another different phrases in English. If we translate it to Arabic, the result will be our translation.
In addition, Hu argues that it is impossible to have the same effect and the same response in two cultures. For example, he works like a dog. The idiom means he works extremely hard. A dog as an animal has many traits such as loyal, hardworking, or sometimes ugly. In Arabic, if the translator uses dog to describe a man, it will be offensive, and the receptor will misunderstand or has an opposite view towards the intended message in the original text. So, it will be in Arabic, he works like a bee.
But Nida himself indicates that because of the differences between cultures, we can never have the same effect, but there should be a high level of equivalent response.
Edwin Gentizler also criticized Nida in his chapter, The Science of Translation. He argues that Nida's theory comes from religious point of view, which is without taking into account receptor's culture.
Additionally, other religious groups criticize Nida's dynamic equivalence because it will change the word of God. It is sacred.
Yeah, and that's why Arnold as well, beside Gentizler, criticized him for his personal attitudes that support the idea of converting people to Christianity.
But Bible translation has a longer history in translation study. It is concerned with variety of languages, cultures, and literary translation.
Yeah, I agree with you. And for the sake of solving the problem of subjectivity, many scholars have established approaches such as taxonomic linguistic approach, descriptive and prescriptive approaches. Now, let's discuss the development of the concept over the years. First of all, we should talk about the Nida's systematic approach, which borrows concepts and terminology from linguistics. Gentesler argues that there are a wide difference between Chomsky and Nida's models, but both of them finally reach similar conclusions that all languages have currents.
Later on, Nida's formal equivalence was called formal correspondence, and dynamic equivalence was called functional equivalence. The formal focuses in the message itself, in the original message, while dynamic focuses in the effect of the message on the receptors.
Yeah, and also many scholars were influenced by Nida's theory or Nida's approach, like Kohler and Newmark. Newmark established approach to translation, the communicative translation, which resembles Nida's dynamic equivalence, and the semantic translation, which resembles Nida's formal equivalence. In addition, Monday reveals that Kohler differentiates 5 types of equivalence: denotative, connotative, text normative, pragmatic, and formal. Also, we should mention the role of Mona Baker. She structures chapters around different kinds of equivalence at the level of word, grammar, phrases, etc. Okay, let's see how we can use the concepts in applying it to translators training today. First of all, we know that the differences between languages and cultures cause problems to apply equivalence. But there are some ways to achieve some kind of equivalence. For example, using structural adjustment, which is a set of strategies that help in achieving high level of equivalence. Those strategies, for instance, the strategy of addition. For example, translating the phrase at worst into Arabic, in the English word or the English phrase consisting of 2 words, and the Arabic translation will be consisting of 3 words. And so the strategy of addition here will be indispensable. There are other strategies as well, like omission. For example, take revenge. There is only 1 word in Arabic translation, and totally it will give the meaning.
Another way of achieving some kind of equivalence is using colors types of equivalence relation. The translator can use hierarchy ordering to meet the needs of communicative situation.
Yeah, a great example of that is translating the word fuck in Arabic. And if we try denotative equivalence, that will give the meaning of sex. And that's not acceptable in Arabic culture. If we try connotative equivalence, for example, damin, that will be suitable in the translation of Arabic.
Yeah, that's right. In the end of our project, we can conclude that the issue of equivalence will remain the central issue of translation studies.